I just feel like I'm like a really perfect fit for your magazine. I don't give a shit about anything, yet I simultaneously have opinions about everything. Oh, come on. I can't believe Marnie wrote me into this. Hi! You think I have time with my burgeoning career to support her, like, sick little tryst? Ray has no idea and thinks he's just in a regular in-love couple. And now, she and Desi are seriously considering trying anal.
He's not getting anything up Marnie's ass.
I'm mentally ill. I'm overweight. I isolate people. Why can't someone just tell me exactly what to do in a way that makes it seem like it's my idea? I tried to reach for all of those ladies out there who like have jobs and purses and nice personalities, those are not my friends.
Why are you guys mad at me about Adam? Grow up!
Who are you to say grow up, huh? I am a grown-up.
Do you promise that we'll always be friends? You think I'm gonna stop being your friend now? After putting up with all this bullshit? I want to write stories that make people feel less alone than I did. I want to make people laugh about the things in life that are painful.
So do you think you're into this surf piece?
The surf piece is like all I've ever wanted to do. I do feel like I need to warn you that I hate and am maybe allergic to sand.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
Also super against sun, super against sunscreen, not into drinking water, and not into watching people have fun.
We are so happy to be here today. Thank you for having us.
I love how we get to act like we don't hang out every minute of every day and aren't always on email and text.
I don't have 9,000 texts from you.
As we speak.
But why are we here? It's the last season of Girls. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
But I'm also mad at you because it's the last season of Girls and I don't want that to happen.
So nice.
So you wrote and directed the pilot when you were what, 24, 25?
24.
So what was it like to be a leader when you were so young, and has that evolved over the past 6 or 7 years? What's changed?
That's a really good question. And I like it because it's a question for me, but it's sort of a question for all women, because I think imposter syndrome is something we all experience, but especially when you're a woman and you're a young woman, there's so much that we've been taught that goes against exhibiting leadership skills that I would say that becoming a boss was probably the hardest transition for me of all. Like, people are like, is it hard becoming a celebrity? Or is it hard being a spokesperson for political issues? And like, all of that stuff has its own challenges. But for me, the most challenging thing has been owning a position of power and holding on to it and not... I've always really known what I wanted creatively. I've always been able to express that. But when it came to management and letting people know what I needed in order to do my job, there was this part of me that felt that I was essentially unworthy of delegating or giving orders to people, especially people who were older or more experienced than me. I mean, you've been the boss of people who are older than you. You know what that's like.
Yeah, it's not that fun.
It's not that fun because there is, even people who really like you, especially with men, there's sort of an inherent resentment that comes from being told to do something differently or, dare I say, better. And I really had to give up on the idea. It's so funny, like, I don't really care if people don't like me on the internet, but I really care deeply if people in my workplace are happy and comfortable. And I had to let go of the idea that at the end of the day, everybody had to be happy with me.
And was there ever a real breakthrough moment when you were learning to be a boss?
I remember... second season of Girls being really, really panicked and being like, feeling like I wasn't nailing a scene, like there was something that I needed to do. And it was something so stupid, like walk across a parking lot, but I just wasn't doing it the way that I felt my character would do it. And at the same time, we were having issues with our camera. And at the same time, there was a costume crisis happening. And I was like, you know what? And I was so worried someone would think I was failing at one of those things. And I was like, but you know what? I'm the only person here attempting to do all those things at once. Totally. So if I screw one of them up, that's okay. And if I don't walk across this parking lot properly, no one's going to notice. And I still am sort of inhabiting my job fully. And it was such a small moment, but such an essential one. But I still, every single day, have to look in the mirror and remind myself that I have the right to ask for what I need in order to make my work.
That's so amazing. Well, so you're not just the boss at Girls. You are also the boss at Lenny.
Although I often feel like you're the boss at Lenny because you write really good, pleasant yet firm emails.
It's my specialty, a pleasant yet firm email. But I would love for you to hear about how you and Jenny were inspired to start Lenny, because I think it's a lovely story.
Well, you came onto it so early, so it wouldn't be anything like what it was without you and without your editorial and authorial voice. But when I went on my book tour for my book, Not That Kind of Girl, in fall of 2014, I did book events across the country. And I didn't want to do the typical book tour, like go out, sort of smile with your book, sign everyone's thing, beg people to buy more for their family. I wanted it to really feel intimate and honest and to be about something. And so with the help of my younger sibling, Grace, I planned a tour that involved traveling with Planned Parenthood, traveling with voter registration, traveling and doing writing workshops across the country with young women and young trans women, helping them sort of access their creative voices. And I realized that there were these pockets of America where women weren't necessarily having the kind of, in New York or LA, it's easy to find creative community, but when you show up in, you know, a part of Iowa where people don't necessarily share your liberal beliefs or don't necessarily support young women or young queer women's creative endeavors, it's a really intense to see. And I noticed that my book tour venues were becoming a place for women to gather. And I could hear girls in line talking about everything from birth control to how they'd gotten their hair that shade of peach to, you know, where'd you get your choker? I made mine. Is yours from Etsy? And I thought, like, there's a real opportunity to tap into this community. And because when you're making a TV show, you're always behind the screen, I had never had a sense of what the community we'd created was. And I came home and immediately said to Jenny, I think we need to create an online presence and an online platform that allows these young women to connect with each other. And even if they don't agree about everything, to connect and push back on feminism, issues of feminism, and also so we can support voices that haven't necessarily been supported by the systems that supported us. And that's when we came to Ben Cooley, our CEO, and to you, and the concept of an email newsletter and the sort of signature Voice of Lenny came to be.
And so, you know, obviously our newsletter has a lot of political content and our readers are so politically engaged, but I'm kind of curious about the politics of Shoshana, Hannah, Jess, and Marnie. How would they be reacting to a Trump administration? I almost kind of think like Shoshana could be Kellyanne Conway in 30 years. Like when she was doing Ray's political, like I was thinking about this the other day.
Shoshana's for sure an evil genius. We spent a lot of time on set this summer talking about who voted for who. Obviously, Ray and Adam were both burners. There's no way that that wasn't happening.
100%.
We think that Shoshana voted for Hillary Clinton. She likes a solid female leader, but by the way, if someone else was to offer her a better job, there's no way she wouldn't take it. We think that Marnie definitely voted for Hillary Clinton. She's been like all about Hillary since Hillary entered the White House when she was 4, and that's her vibe. And we think Hannah just totally fucking forgot to vote. She was like, I think Donald Trump is bad. Oh, and Jemima posited the theory that Jessa voted for Donald Trump as a joke. Like she didn't think it would go as far as it did, and she thought it'd be a funny thing to do. And she also was like, I like that he's real. Like, that's her whole thing. It's like, I like people who keep it real. But now she's starting to feel bad about it because some of her friends are being deported.
Completely makes sense. And I mean, brings us to that we're in a very unique and unprecedented political moment. And so knowing that, how has your vision for Lenny changed? And how has the way that we talk to our readers changed since we started in September 2015, which honestly feels like another lifetime at this point?
It's wild because we started with an interview with Hillary Clinton, who at that time we believed would be the president. And we were sort of like, wow, we'll get her elected and then we'll just get to talk about nail art for the next 4 years. This is going to be perfect. And so it was a very rude awakening for all of us. And we talked about how it is a privilege to be surprised. There's so many people who aren't surprised by the fact that Trump won because they've been part of systems that have failed them again and again since the day that they were born in America. But I think, and you'll tell me if you agree with this, that we've become much more focused on not just information for our readers, but action items.
Absolutely.
Ways to not only teach them to organize and activate for other people, but also to keep themselves safe. Because let's assume that we have readers who are, many of whom are people who are being targeted by the current administration. We may have readers who are undocumented college students, dreamers. We may have readers who are, have a relative who's incarcerated and are afraid about what this means for their prison sentence. We have readers who are trans and are afraid that they're going to lose the hormone therapy that they get from Planned Parenthood. There's so many different people who need not just sort of abstract support, but real action items to help them make their day-to-day life work over the next 4 years.
Absolutely. I think that's right. And so, I mean, another issue, obviously, that is an issue that we talk about a lot at Lenny, but, you know, it has been addressed in some ways by girls is money. And, you know, the series famously started with Hannah getting cut off by her parents.
Yep.
So what I always thought was an interesting choice was that you always showed that the characters had massive safety nets. Like, they would make dumb mistakes, but then you talked about very transparently, like, Jessa's rehab was getting paid for by her grandma. And even in the worst scenarios, these girls, you never worried that anything really bad was going to happen to them. And was that a deliberate choice? Was that something you really wanted to explore with the show?
It was a deliberate choice. And what's so funny is I think so many critics did not give us the benefit of the doubt because it was a show about young women. They almost thought it was like we were just overlooking the fact that huge amounts of Americans live below the poverty line and have absolutely no fallback plan. And I have always thought that if it were a show created by a man, it might be considered a commentary on sort of like middle class ennui, but because it was created by a young woman, they just assumed I was too dumb to know that there were poor people in this country. But the fact is like, I grew up around a lot of girls who the safety net of their families actually really made their maturation go much more slowly, and knowing that they had the option of taking advantage of their family's money or that they'd never fall too low made their work ethics suffer, made the way that they treated other people much more compromised. Like, I think we all know that money is a really complicated thing that has a huge effect on the personalities of people who grow up with or without it. And I kind of wanted this to be a commentary on the way that people who don't have to worry about money create so many other problems and are so hard for them to look outside of their own reality and really see like, oh, actually the issue that I'm having with my boyfriend who sort of won't commit, although problems are relative, is not the same as if I was unable to pay for my gynecological care or my apartment. And so that's something we think a lot about on the show is like these characters probably would be a lot more mature and working a lot more intelligently towards their goals if they didn't know that every time they fucked up, someone would be there to like hand them a couple $1,000s.
So true. So I don't want to spoil anything about the new season except that it's fantastic.
Thank you.
But in the third episode, you deal very straightforwardly with the issue of consent and sexual consent. And you've also written essays about the topic, and I was wondering, how is it different to write an episode of TV where you're facing that pretty head on, and as opposed to writing a nonfiction essay kind of tackling the topic?
Well, when I write nonfiction, like for Lenny, about issues of sexual consent, I can be a little bit more didactic and a little bit more clear about my opinions, a little bit more clear about where I think we need to be moving politically, where I think we need to be moving in terms of education, both for young men and for young women on campuses and off. But on Girls, we've always tried not to be too politically aggressive. We've tried to talk about politics in a way that was super personal. And so this episode doesn't really talk about issues of right or wrong. It more looks at the way that power structures can really painfully inform a sexual interaction. And so when I was writing the episode, unlike when I write an essay and I'm writing a very clear-cut piece about like, this is somebody who hurt somebody and this is the consequence of it, I really wanted to write something that just made people ask questions but didn't necessarily offer them the answers, because we all know, I hope, in this room that rape is wrong. But there's a lot of, I'll talk to some of you later if you have any confusion, but there's a lot of areas of sexuality that are very gray and murky and challenging, where intelligent people can still get it wrong and really, really hurt each other. And that's what this episode is about. And I hope people understand that. And it's also something that I wanted to write about because, you know, it's an issue in colleges, it's an issue off campuses, and it's also a huge issue in Hollywood. As liberal and progressive as Hollywood wants to consider itself, we also have a huge problem with people, particularly men, using their power in order to coerce others into giving them what they want sexually and emotionally. And that's a really dark underbelly of our industry that's existed since our industry began.
Absolutely. And so, you know, we talked at the beginning about you started the show when you were 24 and you are 30 now. An adult. You were always an adult, but like 30. Something about being in your 30s.
At 24, I did not consider myself. At 24, I considered myself a straight up 7th grader. Now I'm just. The other day, I was looking at a form at the doctor's office, and it said 30 years old, and I was like, "Who the fuck is 30 years old?" And I was like, "Oh, it's me."
100%.
Terrifying.
But now that you're looking back, having, this body of work, 6 years, are there things that you would have done differently if you had to do them now?
It's interesting. I'm like really not into regret. My mother is a huge what if person. Like, what if I'd worn a different dress to the party? What if I'd served something different at dinner? What if I hadn't dated that guy for 3 years? And so I've almost been allergic to regret. And I'm really into just learning things and taking them with you. So it's like there's so much I learned through the show. For example, the dialogue about race and inclusivity at the beginning of the show. Would I make another show that starred 4 white girls and had 4 white girls on the poster? No, never. Do I regret having done it? No, because I think that was an educational tool for me. It started a dialogue in the world, and that's what made the show what it was. And so that's not saying that I don't own my mistakes, but it's also not denouncing my work. It's like I try to live in that sweet spot where you've learned, but you also accept the things you've made and the person you've been.
And so it's 10 years from now. We're imagining this.
Yes.
Maybe our hovercrafts. What do you think your hair looks like?
Such a great question. I think about this a lot. Once I'm a mom, which I hope to be in 10 years, I really want to have one of those like casual ponytails that you kind of like is like really long and like maybe kind of blondish at the end, and you like stick a pencil in it and just like run off to where you're going. Like I'd like to have much more like easy casual hair, which has never come naturally to me, and I don't know why I think it will in 10 years.
But also it will be 10 years from when Girls ended.
That too.
So what do you think, Vulture or EW, or they're going to, have their quota to write that day, and they're going to say, it's the 10th anniversary of Girls. Look back at the series. What are they going to be saying?
I hope what they say isn't like, oh, it was the definitive series about women in their 20s, because we know there's no definitive series about women in their 20s. Like all of these, what's really important and what I really learned from the dialogue about diversity and representation on the show is that so many female creators' voices need to be out there, which is why I'm so happy that we have everyone from, Issa Rae to Pamela Adlon to the girls of Broad City to Shonda Rhimes. Like we need these Jill Soloway, we need these female creators grabbing and lifting various people up. And I hope that they'll say that Girls was one of the shows that allowed for a different kind of woman to be on TV, one who didn't need to have, perfectly smooth edges, but who was allowed to be complicated and crazy and a complete weirdo and have all of the fun that their male counterparts had on television. And I hope they look back and there's so many shows created by women that push the boundaries that we're just one of many.
I think that is really going to happen. I have faith.
I do too,
Absolute faith.
actually. I do too. Man, I loved this season of Insecure so much. I felt so happy it was on TV.
It's amazing.
And it's like there's so many shows like that right now. Like I just watched Fleabag. I watched Chewing Gum, 2 British shows. I'm like, all these women have such massive stories, and our job is just to watch and watch and watch so that people understand, oh yes, we need these voices on the air.
I would like to see in 10 years older, you mentioned Pamela Adlon, but, it's like a show about a 60-year-old woman and her life. I mean, that's something we don't see at all.
They're really good at it in England. Like, I don't know if anyone watches Happy Valley. It is a police show, but it's so cool. It's like a police show about a struggling woman in her 50s trying to figure out what like honor and duty mean to her. And I'm like, I could watch this woman all day. Like, who said that you need to have a sexy young ingenue to make something work?
Well, in Hollywood, don't they just push you off the cliff when you're 45?
I literally can't even imagine.
Send you out on the ice floe?
You get to play Ben Affleck's mother once, and then you go away.
Yeah. And on that note, we would love to take some questions from the audience.
Oh, yeah.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Who's on your tights? Are those all James Franco's?
Yes.
Love. Love. Very provocative.
Thank you. So my name is Danielle.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So my question is some of you answered like half of my questions already.
Oh, good.
Yeah, in this
Very
panel.
good at her job.
Try.
Do you have any inspirational place that you like to write in?
I like to write in bed. I wouldn't say that's very inspirational. I'd say it's anti-inspirational, but I am taking a trip to Norway soon, and I'm going to be finishing my book there. So I'm hoping that Oslo will become my magical writing haven.
Next question.
Hi.
Hi.
I really love Girls. I think it's so rich and
Thank you.
screamingly funny. And I think the characters are so well written and acted. But about 90% of the time, I kind of hate them and find them infuriating.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most incredible things about the show is how I ultimately deeply care about them. And I wanted to know how you balance the tone of making the characters complex. And you sometimes, I mean, I watch the show time and I go, ugh, and I get angry at the characters, but I ultimately love them. I wanted to know how you balance, and if you care if the audience likes the characters or how they like them.
That's such a great question, and I love your Dracula shirt, and thank you for being so thoughtful. You know, it's interesting. I've never cared that much about like likability. It just hasn't been a huge issue for me. And so, you know, I think that for me, the big thing is that likability is a kind of a trap that we've put women into. And I think that there's plenty of male characters on television who get to do these really bad things, murder people and make meth, and nobody has a problem with it. And so I sort of always thought like, okay, well, if guys can do that, then girls can definitely just be like rude on a date. But the other thing is that, you know, I think I look around at my friends, my family, the people I work with, and I don't like them all the time, but I love them. And some of the people who I care about the most make me the maddest. And that's really, really, really important stuff to look at. And so for me, I kind of try to think about the people I love and how far they can go before they lose me and what they have to do to redeem themselves.
That was great. Next.
Hi.
Hi.
We love girls so much. I have so many different questions, but what I wanted to say is I love how all the characters end up sort of in each other's lives. And I was watching Crash. Do you remember that movie?
Yes.
And
Wait, the David Cronenberg one or the one?
No, the other one.
Okay, not the filthy
Not the
car
crazy
accident
one.
sex one. Got it.
The
yes.
car accident. But
Yes.
everyone's life intertwines
Yes,
eventually. And
it won the Oscar. Paul Haggis.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if A, if you were going to do a movie, and if B, it might actually sort of be like that, where everyone's life would intertwine and you'd already kind of know that it was coming. And
That's so interesting. Well, I definitely want to make more movies, and I definitely want to make a girls' movie. And I do think if we did a girls' movie, I mean, it's never been the pattern of the show that the girls all sit around in a cafe together. So I think it would follow that spirit, which is like you understand that people have separated, but they're still connected to each other. And that's something we think a lot about when we think about how would we treat these characters in the future.
One more. Where?
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to know how you incorporate your sense of self and like when you play other characters or when you write other characters, how you incorporate yourself into that.
That's such a good question. Well, most of the time when I'm playing a character, it's usually one that I've basically based on me. So it's pretty easy because she's doing something that I've done in the past. And I just try to put aside the shame of that and perform it as well as I can. And then when I'm writing the other characters on the show, there's a lot of me in them too. And it can be great to realize like there's an experience that I've had that doesn't necessarily make sense for Hannah, but can find its way into Jess's story, or an experience my mom or sibling has had that I can kind of somehow weirdly sneak into Adam's life. Like all the characters become places to hide stories and memories. And then something that I do when I'm on somebody else's set, which isn't that often, which is sort of a basic acting trick, but I never went to acting school, so no one ever taught it to me. I just sort of figured it out. That doesn't mean I'm smart. It just means it's really simple. Is that when you're playing somebody else, you just kind of go into a moment where you go like, well, when's a time I felt this way? And what was it like for me? And that helps you to connect to the person that you're playing, is just to remember, like, I remember I was doing a scene in this movie called Sky where I played a mom of 3, and I'm not a mom of 3, but I remembered what it felt like to be chasing my dog around the house, feeling like I had no power over him, and when was my boyfriend going to be home, and I just wanted to take a nap, and just like connecting to that feeling of desperation, I was able to, like, for 20 minutes, kind of act like a single mother of 3, and that to me is like finding the humanity and the part of yourself that you that is human in each character you play is really important.
Okay, we have time for one more.
Hi.
I love your shirt too. Everyone's got the best shirts.
Don't say that because then I'm not going to be able to talk. So you guys talked about, I love Hannah. She's my favorite character. I don't care what anyone says.
Thank you so much.
And I love that you get naked on TV all the time. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I love you for loving it. Thank you.
So you guys talked about what you want the media to say about girls in 20 years, but what do you want girls' legacy to be 20, 30 years from now?
It's a great question. I mean, I guess my biggest hope is not just that would have created space for female creators or that it would have created space for prickly women on television. But I would also love, there have been times where there's been so much dialogue about the show, so many think pieces that it's drowned out what I think. I think I worked with so many amazing artists over the course of the show, whether it was the actors, the cinematographers, the costume designers, and they really helped to make it feel more like mini films than it did a television show. And I would love it if, film schools looked back and looked at the craft of the show and thought, wow, that was a different way of making TV, because it's easy to talk about the social implications, but I would so love for people to also connect closely and in a very real way to the artistry of it. Thank you.
So, Lena, when can we watch Girls?
You can watch Girls this Sunday on HBO at 10 p.m. I feel really excited about the episode. It's a long one. It's like 45 minutes, so you get a little extra bang for your buck. And we've got some pretty good guest stars, and I do my own stunts, and I'm hoping that you'll tune in.
And where can people subscribe to Lenny?
Oh, well, you can subscribe to Lenny at lennyletter.com. And the great thing about Lenny is, unlike HBO, it's free.
And thank you all for being here, and thank you, Lena,
Thank
for
you.
answering these amazing
Thank
questions.
you.